most feared things that a human being has is that, God forbid, one will lose one's memory.
I agree.
Right? There's nothing more fearsome than that.
Right.
And sometimes it's, God forbid, even family, everything is gone. I think that one of the major problems in the Jewish world today is amnesia. There's an entire blackout of memory, so that a portion of the Jewish people think the world began in 1991, a portion thinks it began in 1967, a portion even says 1948, but we began at Sinai, right? And so there's a perspective. And
I knew you from somewhere.
That's
now
right.
I remember from Sinai. We were
That's
standing
right.
together in Sinai.
That's right. So that's the perspective that Jews always had. And when they had that perspective, so terrible events, no matter how terrible, somehow could be fitted into that perspective and we could continue. But if there's no perspective and we're blindsided by events, very difficult. So, for instance, let's start 1948. You were in Israel then. It was before the state. You were
Yes.
you were fighting for the survival of the Jewish people. So what
Yes.
was it like then?
Well, first of all, I think you'll agree that Jews think back thousands of years, but we also think forward thousands of years. What is the whole notion, how I interpret Ushenantem Levanech? It's the future.
Right.
My whole perspective of living in Israel now for close to 70 years, having come from Manchester as a youngster at the age of 17 to fight the British, I think that when you're living a moment of history, sometimes you're unaware.
That's right. Ein balanes makim beniso.
Right.
Right. A person that has miracles, he doesn't realize it.
And I had no idea what I was letting myself into, except I had the idea, I had the vision of a Medinat Israel that after the Holocaust and the utter ripping apart of one thought at the time almost of Jewish history, there was an instinct that always kept the Jews alive. At that moment in time, it was statehood, sovereignty, freedom.
Independence, being able to be our own boss.
Exactly. So on Hei Iyar, Tafshin Chet, which was 1948, May the 15th, I was with a group, I was in the Haganah in Jerusalem, which was under siege. And we were digging trenches where Yad Vashem now stands.
Yeah.
We were digging trenches.
The top of Beit Vegan.
That's right. And it overlooks the village of Ein Karim.
Right, Ein Karim.
And we had, we were expecting an attack from Ein Karim. And we were a motley group of about 25. None of us were trained. We had between us about 12 World War I rifles. And we were supposed to stop
this attack.
A rumored attack. We had no intelligence. A rumored attack by the Arab Legion and Iraqi infiltrators who'd come in. And this was a Friday.
Yep.
And we had among us one fellow, no youngster, his name was Mahler. He was a great grandnephew of the composer Gustav Mahler.
Oh, wow.
He was a violinist.
That's right.
And wherever he went, he had a knapsack, and in his knapsack was a violin case. But I never heard him play the violin. And we were very concerned about his fingers, his hands, that he wouldn't get blisters, because we were hacking away at trenches preparatory to hold back an attack. And so, having known, we were totally cut off. So we asked him, try and find your way into town and bring back some hard information. Would Ben Gurion be declaring independence that day? Would the British be leaving? And he came back close to midnight. And he said, "Yesh li chadashot, I've got news. And yes, the British have left, and the Ben Gurion has declared independence in Tel Aviv that day. And the Jewish state will come into being at midnight." And midnight was minutes away. And so we hugged and we embraced, and it was a very emotional moment. And then somebody asked him, "Mala, what's the name of our country?" And he stared back at us blankly. And he said, "Lo yodea, I didn't know, I didn't think to ask." So somebody said, "Oh, it's going to be called Zion." It's an obvious name. And now they said, "No, it'll be called Yehuda, Judea. David's kingdom was Judah." Somebody said, "And what's wrong with Israel?" And so one of us, he brought back with him a bottle of wine, and he filled it to the brim, and he said, "Let's drink a l'chaim to our new state, whatever its name is." And among us was a chassid, his name was Reb Nussen de Chazan. And he said, wait, it's Shabbos. Let's make Kiddush first. Well, that is a Kiddush I will never forget.
I can imagine.
And he ended that Kiddush, Makadesh HaShabbos, and then he made the Brucha B'Shem V'Malchus Shechianu V'Kimanu. I don't know if it was a dried eye amongst them. And then shortly afterwards the battle began, and mortars and cannon and carnage, and that's how my day of independence.
I want to tell you my day of independence in Chicago. I'm just past Bar Mitzvah, and we're walking to shul with my father for Mincha Erev Shabbos. My father was a very great man, but he was not an emotional man. All of my life, maybe I saw him 2 or 3 times weep. But we were walking to shul, and every step of the way he wept. He wept. And he wept for the whole 2,000 years, not for what happened here. And I said I was just past Bar Mitzvah. I didn't quite get it yet. That was Friday, Erev Shabbat. Sunday, the Jewish community of Chicago held a meeting in the Chicago Stadium. And Golda Meir was there then. She still was Golda Meyerson still. And so there were 20,000 Jews inside the stadium, and there were 20,000 Jews in the parking lot outside the stadium, and there were loudspeakers. So I remember that the Rabbi from the yeshiva, none of whom could be accused of being Zionists. None, but if we would have those type of non-Zionists today, it would be a great world. So they said to us, "We're going to go Sunday night, Medav Gain. You have to go." And we all went, and the program opened with the raising of the Israeli flag to the rafters of the Chicago Stadium. When they did that, 20,000 people burst into tears. It was a sea of tears. And I felt that anything that happened afterwards was anticlimactic. All the speeches, and the only other emotional thing in the evening was the playing of Atikva at the end. But everything else, your speech, but that was the moment. Because again, if it was the 40,000 Jews of Chicago, that was their connection to the whole Jewish history. And that was their connection to the whole Jewish future. And nobody knew what was going to be. They were attacked, Tel Aviv is being bombed, and this and that. And and the rumors in America were that the Israelis were going to last 10 days. But nevertheless, that moment, so that's an electric moment.
Well, I would like to, you've sparked an idea within me.
I hope so. I can't do it in my synagogue. I hope I do it somewhere else.
Because this is the idea that you've sparked. There you were in Chicago, kid of 13, sensing that something momentous had been happened, which you didn't fully grasp. there was I on a hilltop in Jerusalem, waiting for a war to begin, and it began. But me, like you, I didn't understand fully the significance of what was happening,
happened.
that we were on that moment changing the whole course of Jewish history.
Right.
And I, thinking about it now as we're chatting, it occurred to me that that night of Leil Shabbatov, that we had embarked upon a revolution that was no less a revolution than the American Revolution, and perhaps even more so.
Absolutely.
Because up till that night, we Jews, if I can use an abstract expression, we Jews had been a mere object of history. What is an object of history? People were always making the decisions for us.
Right. History happened to us. We didn't happen history.
Exactly. From that night forth,
We made history.
we became the subject of history.
That's right. That's
we
right.
entered the family of nations
That's not only that. It's
according to our own needs, our own wants, our own determinations.
and to the best of my knowledge, we're the only comeback story in the history of the world.
I agree with you.
Nobody.
There's no precedent.
Nobody ever came back. You know, by history, when you're done, you're done.
And it came back in every sense.
And it came back in every. So the language came back, Torah came back, the land came back, the people came back. I remember when we talk about things. I remember that when the Soviet Jewry drive began in the United States. So we had meetings in our synagogue and everybody, and in fact, my history tapes they smuggled into the Soviet Union. I met Russians later,
Yes.
and they said, "Oh, we heard your tapes,"
Yes.
you know. So I was very flattered. They said, "We didn't care about the contents. We wanted to learn English." So they all speak English with a Chicago accent. But in any event, we did not believe that Soviet Jewry would ever get out.
Yes.
We never believed it.
Yes.
And I always said, you know, I don't think anybody believed it because nobody was ready. All of a sudden, God said, here's 1 million Soviet Jews, do something with them.
I think
And that is the general story, generally, is the fact that the whole thing is a source of wonder to us, and therefore we don't know how to handle it.
I think that the Soviet Jewry movement, Let My People Go movement,
Right.
was the last consensual
Yeah, covered Klal Yisrael.
Klal Yisrael.
That's right.
There has not been one since.
No, it hasn't been.
There is a general unity and
Yeah,
support of Israel.
But not to that
But
extent.
the passion and the drive which embraced the whole
And
people.
you know, it's my humble opinion that that's what brought down the Soviet Union. It's not Sharansky brought them down, and not Reagan. I mean, that's the Ribono Shel Olam plays the game.
I think in Jewish terms you can put it under the category of a momentous collective pidyon shvuyim,
Absolutely.
of the liberation of prisoners.
It was a remarkable thing.